We know you have a lot of ways you could be spending your time, and it means so much to us that you're here for Castle Hills Christian Church, online church. We encourage everyone to minimize distractions, to grab a Bible, and to prepare your heart and mind to worship, learn, and fellowship together online. Later in the service, we'll be taking communion together, so we encourage you to grab some bread and some juice to prepare for that later on in the service. We're asking everyone to fill out a connection card at chccsa.info. There you'll find all kinds of other information about our church. We'd love to connect with you at chccsa.info. Let's worship together.
Heaven thundered, and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you formed. Faith commanded, and the mountains moved. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus has overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the stone was gone. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Oh, oh, oh. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on and on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. covenant and faithful promises. Yeah, time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Seasons change, you remain the same. God from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Yeah, history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. As I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation, he'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation, he'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. Oh, I'll still bless you in the middle of the storm, in the middle of my trial. I'll still bless you when I'm in the middle of the road and I don't know which way to go. I'll still bless you. I got a reason, I will bless you. I'll still bless you. You've been faithful, you've been faithful, you've been faithful. Yeah, great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. And great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Good morning. Today we're talking about Mark chapter 13, one of the most controversial passages in the Bible, a passage that's been greatly debated for many, many years. You will see the title of this message, Signs of the Second Coming, ? Because there's a lot of different interpretations for this passage. Some will say that it is signs for the second coming. Others will say it's signs of the destruction of the temple. Some will say it's a combination of both. And even when you look in various translations, you'll see different titles or subheadings for this passage. I think it's important when we study Scripture, first of all, to realize that we don't have to agree on the interpretation. You don't have to agree with me today, but we can still be friends. And we can still discuss difficult passages with love and compassion. And so I just want you to know, if you don't agree with the interpretation I have today, it's okay. I still love you, and I hope that you'll still love me, and who knows, maybe I'll change my mind with time. When we study these passages, it's important for us to look at the context. We believe that context is king, so we want to study before and after and try to figure out what's going on historically. If we look at Mark 11 and chapter 12, we see that Jesus has been teaching at the temple. He's visited there. He's cleared out the temple. He's basically shut it down, and he's had some confrontation with the religious leaders there. And so that's kind of what's going on beforehand. But today, let's go ahead and dig right into our passage. It's a long passage. Verse 1, it says, as Jesus was leaving the temple that day, one of his disciples said, "Teacher, look at these magnificent buildings. Look at the impressive stones in the walls." Jesus replied, "Yes, look at the great buildings, but they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another." Later, and Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives across the valley from the temple. Peter, James, and John, and Andrew came to him privately and asked him, "Tell us when this will happen. What sign will show us that these things are about to be fulfilled?" According to historians and archaeologists, the temple was just amazing. It was big, it was beautiful, it was very impressive. The temple complex covered about 35 acres. It was the pride of the Jewish people. It had gold on its walls that glistened. It was built shortly after the Jews came back from Babylon exile, and Herod had been doing a lot of renovations there, expanding it. The stones there weighed in the tons, and they were large. The Jewish historian Josephus tells us that some of the stones were 67 feet long, just massive, massive stones. It had 162 pillars holding up the exterior roof from the outer court. The temple itself rose about 150 feet higher than the rest of the city, making it almost like a mountain in the middle of Jerusalem. Some of the blocks of the temple were white marble, and as from a distance, if it was a cloudy day or overcast day, and you didn't get blinded from the reflection from the gold, that sometimes the temple looked like it was snow-covered because it was so white. The walls of the temple were immense. The southern wall by itself, ascended from the Kidron Valley, was 210 feet high, about the size of a 15-story building. And so the temple was something that Jews were proud of. I mean, it was an impressive building. But Jesus said it was going to be destroyed, that every stone was to be thrown down. And here's the question. The question the disciples had, hey, when's this going to happen? And what sign should we be looking for? Well, if we keep on reading, it says, Jesus said, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of war, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen. But the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines, and these are the beginning of the birth pains. You must be on your guard. You must be handed over to local councils and flogged by the synagogues. On account of me, you will stand before governors and kings as the witness to them. If you keep on reading, you'll see that they're going to face betrayal from family and friends, and it's just going to be a very, very difficult time. And so is Jesus talking about the end of the world, or is he talking about the destruction of the temple? Well, when we put our fingers in the history books, we see that there was an abundance of false teachers, especially between AD 30 and 70 AD. Acts 5:36 tells us about a guy named Thaddeus, that he claimed to be a prophet of God and had miraculous powers, that he could part the Jordan River at his command. Eventually, the Romans came along and assassinated him and took him out, and we found out that he was a false Messiah. If you look in Acts chapter 21, it tells of an Egyptian who claimed to be a prophet, and he had about 4,000 followers, a group of about 4,000 out in the wilderness, and he claimed to have miraculous powers, and he could command the walls of Jerusalem to fall. And he was also attacked by the Romans. His followers scattered, and eventually he escaped, but he was never heard of again. And so there was a lot of different false messiahs, false teachers back then. And there was also earthquakes before 70 AD. One destroyed Laodicea, Philippi, Corinth, Cyprus. There was also volcano eruptions. The book of Acts tells us that there were various apostles such as Paul and other Christians that were beaten, persecuted, arrested, dragged before governors and kings and gave their testimony before them. And so Jesus, up to this point in time, has been describing birth pains. But then we come to verse 14, and it's one of the most puzzling verses here in this passage. It says, when you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. When we see the abomination of desolation, and then the people are to flee to the hills. They're to flee to the mountains. Now, I want us to think for a minute, if this is the end of the world or the second coming, what good would it do to run to the hills or run to the mountains? Why would only people in Judea need to run to the mountains if this was the time of the second coming? So I believe this passage, at least up to this point in time, is pointing to the temple's destruction. We see that people need to evacuate quickly when they see this taking place. Now, what is this abomination of desolation? It's a term used in the book of Daniel in some of his prophecies, Daniel 9:27, 11:31, 12:1, which speak of an enemy or a power attacking. And basically what we're going to see is a Gentile or a power where it should not be. Some have suggested that it's a reference to some zealots, a guy named John and another man named Eleazar, who came into the temple and basically around 67 to 68 8 AD, and they roamed the temple, including the Holy of Holies. They even murdered in the temple, and there was a guy named Fanny that was appointed high priest, and basically making a mockery of the temple. Others would say that it was the Romans when they invaded the temple, and it was a time to flee. It was not an easy time for the people there. If you're pregnant, it was not going to be easy. If it was in the time of winter, it was going to be difficult. It was just going to be an extremely difficult time. If you keep on reading at verse 24, it says, but in those days following that distress, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And he will send angels and gather his elect from the four winds and from the winds of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Now, this must be talking about the end of the world, the second coming, right? And many scholars would say yes. Up to this point in time, Jesus had been talking about the destruction of the temple, but now he switches course and is talking about his second coming. And I think there's some context that could back this up. If you look at two parables following this passage, you'll see that one that seems to be pointing to the destruction of the temple, but the second one could be talking about a disciple's behavior before the Son of Man arrives. And so it's definitely possible that this is talking about the second coming or Jesus coming back. Or another alternative view would be that this language also is used to describe the fall of a nation. If you turn in the Old Testament to Isaiah chapter 13, it says, "For see, the day of the Lord is coming, the terrible day of his fury and fierce anger. The land will be made desolate, and all the sinners destroyed with it. The heavens will be black above them, and the stars will give no light, and the sun will be dark when it arises, and the moon will provide no light." Verse 11 of Isaiah chapter 13, "I, the Lord, will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their sin. I will crush the arrogance of the proud and humble the pride of the mighty. I will make people scarcer than gold and more rare than the fine gold of Ophir. For I will shake the heavens, and the earth will move from its place when the Lord of heaven's armies displays his wrath in the day of his fierce anger." And we look at a passage like this and we're like, well, surely that has to do with the second coming of the Lord. But if you look in verse 1 of Isaiah chapter 13, it's actually a prophecy against Babylon. And so we see this graphic language used when judgment is coming, especially of the end of a nation. And so it's possible that Jesus could be using the same imagery, talking about, hey, Jerusalem, the temple is going to come to an end. This Jewish age as we know it, God's bringing judgment up on it. So what about the passage that the part that Mark talks about the Son of Man would be coming in clouds? I mean, surely that's the second coming, right? Well, if we had time, I'd go in a little bit more detail. But when we see Jesus coming in clouds, it's a picture of judgment. Look at Revelation 1:7. But the easiest place to look at this is Matthew chapter 26, verse 64. Jesus tells Caiaphas, the high priest, that he would see the Son of Man coming in clouds of heaven. And how could Caiaphas see the Son of Man coming in clouds of heaven? How is that possible? Well, if that is the reference to the end of the world, I mean, how is that possible? Well, we need to understand that most likely that Jesus is talking about judgment. Hey, Caiaphas, you're going to be judged. And here, guess what? God's people are going to be judged, and all the corruption that has taken place in the temple is going to be judged. And so I don't believe this is referring to my personal belief is I don't believe that this is referring to the second coming. I believe this is talking about the temple or destruction of the temple. So if this isn't referring to the end of the world and the second coming, how does this passage make a difference in my life? I mean, this is great information, but how does it make a difference in my life? Well, first of all, I just want to make sure that you know, in 70 AD, the Romans did conquer the temple, conquered Jerusalem, and there was no stone unturned. And so it was they basically destroyed everything. But I think Jesus here is not just announcing the destruction of the temple. Not only that, but he's saying there's an age that's coming that's going to be filled with tribulation and tough times. There's going to be persecution. There's going to be upheaval. There's going to be unrest. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. And there's going to be false teachers. And there's going to be difficult times. But if you study the Gospel of Mark, he encourages the reader to have discernment, to remain steadfast, to remain faithful. You'll see terms such as watch out, be on your guard for those who would deceive, be ready. And in this present age of uncertainty and trials and tribulation, what do we normally do? We normally think about ourselves. We think about how we can take care of us. We think about self-protection. And if we're not careful, we can fall into the world's traps of worrying about everything and letting our lives be lived with fear. And we can fall into believing conspiracies and all kinds of other things. But I think Mark is encouraging us to be on guard, to see through some of these things. Instead of worrying about ourselves, what if we focused on caring about others? Well, what if we took care of widows and our elderly? Well, what if we looked out for those kids who are on the streets? Well, what if we did everything that we could, not to just take care of ourselves, but what if we loved others? When I look at the early church, they were known for loving others. They were the ones who started hospitals. They were the ones who took care of everyone that no one else wanted to pay attention to. They didn't depend on the government. It was the church that was leading the way. And I feel like in times like this, and we've had a lot of uncertainty the last few years, we just don't know what's going to happen, it seems like. There's always something that's in the news that's going on. But we as Christians, we have a great opportunity. We can bring the kingdom of God to this earth. We can have an attitude that we're not going to be fearful. We're going to say, you know what, I've read the end of the book. I know that we win. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have joy and I'm going to have peace, and I'm not going to get anxious. I'm going to say, hey, guys, it's okay. And I'm going to love people. I'm not going to be selfish, and I'm not going to hoard toilet paper and water and any time that something goes on. No, I want us to be the most generous people on earth. And so this week, I want to give you a couple of things to think about. First of all, would you pray for discernment? As we're bombarded with all kinds of information, would you pray for discernment? Secondly, would you discuss Mark chapter 13 with someone? And just say, hey, what do you think about this passage? And then how does this passage make an impact on your life? Each week we take communion. And when I'm discouraged now and beaten down, I'm so grateful to take communion. Because there's days that I come in and I'm like, man, this has just been a long week. I'm exhausted. And then when I take communion, I remember what Jesus has done for me, that he gave his life, that he came into this world and he knows pain and he knows suffering and he knows discouragement. And the worst thing that can happen to us is death. And Jesus conquered death. And so each week as we take communion, we give thanks to him for giving his life. Would you pray with me? Jesus, I just want to thank you for giving your life for us. I want to thank you for coming into this world, knowing our pain, and help us as some of us today, we may be a little discouraged. Thank you for giving us hope. In your precious holy name, amen.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. You came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied. Oh, here in your love. Yeah, oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. I know it's true, and I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, 'cause my failures and flaws, Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, no, nothing is better than you. Oh, I know it's true. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing, no, better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turned mourning into dancing. You ashes. You turn shame into glory, and you're the only one who can. You turn mourning into dancing. You ashes. You turn shame into glory, and you're the only one who can. He's turned grace. You turn grace into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways, and you're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, no, nothing is better than you. I've searched and I've found that there's nothing better than you. There's nothing, no, better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. He's turning graves. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways, and you're the only one who can. He's turning graves. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can.
We're excited to know that some of you are ready to take some next steps in your faith journey. We want to come alongside you, support you, and equip you through this process. chccsa.info is your central hub for all next steps. If you want to submit a prayer request, talk to someone about getting baptized and giving your life to Jesus, or you're looking for a place to serve or a place to get connected to our church, chccsa.info is a great place to start for all these next steps. Some of you call Castle Hills Christian Church your home. And if that's you and you want to continue to partner with us financially as we serve both here in San Antonio and around the world, you can go to give.chccsa.com, or you can text the message GIVE to the number 210-903-5440. Thank you for your support. We're so glad that you're here today, and we hope to see you next week.